breakers is also people tend to think of genetics in terms of how it makes you like your parents. You know, you got your genes from your parents. But the other thing that I think is really important to keep in mind is genes recombine, right? You are not just like your dad or like your mom. You are a random draw of all the potential draws that you could have gotten from their genotypes. And so even within a family with the same parents, you see tons of differences. I have 3 kids and they are different personalities, definitely different risks for addiction and conduct disorder problems across the 3 of them. And so I think it's a mistake to think of lineage as genes being an unbroken lineage, because our genes are getting recombined in these novel ways with every generation. The writer Andrew Solomon says that we should never use the word reproduce. Reproduce is something that lulls parents into thinking that they're copying themselves, but that every child is produced. Every child is a new product, and it's unpredictable what that product is going to be.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that word in that way.
Yeah.
Wild. Who said that?
Andrew Solomon. He wrote Far from the Tree, which is about children who are very different from their parents in some way. So deaf children of hearing parents, savants whose parents are like, we don't know where this chess or music or math came from. And then also interviewed Dylan Klebold's mother. So Dylan Klebold was one of the Columbine shooters. So normal suburban parents who ended up having a child who was a school shooter. And he talks about this idea of horizontal versus vertical identities. So you get your vertical identity from your parents, but then you are not your parents. You are not a reproduction of them. They produced you, and that there's an identity that's separate from that lineage.
Beautiful.
He's a great writer.
I'd like to take a quick break to acknowledge our sponsor, Our Place. Our Place makes my favorite pots, pans, and other cookware. Surprisingly, toxic compounds such as PFASs or forever chemicals are still found in 80% of nonstick pans, as well as utensils, appliances, and countless other kitchen products. As I've discussed before on this podcast, these PFASs or forever chemicals like Teflon have been linked to major health issues such as hormone disruption, gut microbiome disruption, fertility issues, and many other health problems. So it's very important to avoid them. This is why I'm a huge fan of Our Place. Our Place products are made with the highest quality materials and are all PFAS and toxin-free. I particularly love their Titanium Always Pan Pro. It's the first nonstick pan made with 0 chemicals and 0 coating. Instead, it uses pure titanium. This means it has no harmful forever chemicals and does not degrade or lose its nonstick effect over time. It's also beautiful to look at. I cook eggs in my Titanium Always Pan Pro almost every morning. The design allows for the eggs to cook perfectly without sticking to the pan. I also cook burgers and steaks in it, and it always puts a really nice sear on the meat. But again, nothing sticks to it, so it's really easy to clean, and it's even dishwasher safe. I love it, and I use it constantly. Our Place now has a full line of Titanium Pro cookware that uses the first of its kind titanium non-stick technology. So if you're looking for non-toxic, long-lasting pots and pans, go to FromOurPlace.com/Huberman and use the code Huberman. With a 100-day risk-free trial, free shipping, and free returns, you can try Our Place with 0 risk, and you can see why more than 1 million people have made the switch to Our Place kitchenware.
I like to believe that despite the fact that humans have some selfish wiring, that we are all inherently good, can be drawn toward goodness, can, in the right conditions and with the right amount of effort, can direct ourselves in ways that are really beneficial. Learn from mistakes, be benevolent, all that stuff. I think I believe that. I think most people believe that. We want to believe that. If we step a little bit away from the extremes of like severe psychopathology and sociopathy, and, some people are more mercenary than others. And our society in certain careers tends to favor that. When I was coming up in science, I don't know what it was like in psychology, but there was this cohort of scientists, neuroscientists in New York. They were called the New York Neuroscience Mafia. Two of them have Nobel Prizes. I'm friendly with these guys. But you'd go to meetings and they would hold court in a way that was all about them. It was all about their displays. They're brilliant. They've done brilliant work. But for a lot of people coming up, it was sort of a pressure test. Like, do you think we could make it in this field? Like, we're going to have to either wait till these guys die or, somehow integrate with this scene. And they would pick favorites, and they would decide who they'd go to drinks with, and it was very hierarchical.
Every scientific field is like this.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. All right. So I'm both relieved and dismayed that every field is like that, and very different than the West Coast version of it, because we are a little softer on the West Coast. But on the West Coast, there was a more cryptic version of it.
Yeah. Southerners are like that too.
Oh, is that right?
It's not that they aren't mercenary; it's that they hide it, right, under a blanket of softness.
Is the Midwest the only place where people are truly decent?
Have you ever seen that thing where it's like, it divides the country into quadrants and it's like ax mean is mean, like ax nice is mean, that's the South.
Okay.
And then I think it's the Pacific Northwest is ax nice is nice. But I don't know about the Midwest, but
What was California?
I don't remember.
Oh, probably ax nice is mean. Is that the sort of?
Probably.
It could be.
Yeah,
I mean, here we're focusing on the Darby, and there's good people in every field. But I remember thinking, like going to a meeting meant you couldn't let your guard down.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and I now know, because I'm adjacent to it now, because I don't depend on them for grant reviews, or I don't need anything from those guys anymore. I remember the moment where they sort of invited me in was where one kind of took a little jab at me, and I jabbed right back, but I hit him harder. Why would it be that like you get invited into a group with special resources by virtue of being kind of a jerk?
Yeah.
I'm going to be a jerk to you, and if you can be a jerk back, like we can be jerks together.
Yeah, it's a status dominant.
It really sucks.
It's a status dominance move. It's saying, I'm signaling to you that I'm confident enough in whatever this is that I don't need to cower or submit. And then someone's like, maybe I don't want to be in a status dominance aggression competition with him because he might win. So now we're going to. I have a theory that a lot of scientific fields and men in scientific fields are a little bit like mice, in that mice have very rigid social hierarchies that they establish through aggression. And once everyone's figured out like who can bite whom without getting bitten back, then they can settle into their nice hierarchy. And you bit back. So you were like, no, I'm higher in the hierarchy than you
grew up in
think
a big
that I
pack of guys. Like I never was the aggressor, but like if you don't bite back, when somebody kind of with more power than you pokes on you. But you
were saying I'm not acting like you have more power than me. I'm acting like I can poke back, right?
But it doesn't feel good, right? We would all like to believe that we can ascend in our fields, settle into our place without having to like
throw elbows.
Do that. Yeah. I mean, because anyway.
So I think one thing that the story gets at too is, we talk about impulsivity and desire for intensity and disagreeableness. Like I don't actually care who I'm hurting in this as unambiguously bad things. But a little bit of those can be very adaptive in some circumstances. Like you don't want your surgeon to be like, oh, am I hurting them by cutting them open? Like you want someone who's a little bit callous to your physical pain because they're focusing on you as a body and doing this. If you look at studies of who is a successful entrepreneur by the age of 30, they are white men, so social advantage, high IQ, as measured by a standardized test, history of a little bit of adolescent delinquency, right? And that makes sense if you're thinking about adolescent delinquency was a manifestation of risk tolerance, of sensation seeking, and who are the people who are not going to be real great at having a boss, but able to tolerate the risk of starting a business, right? Like academia is full of people like that are like, I want to think about what I want to think about, and I don't want anyone telling me what to do, and I don't really care if other people think this is useful, and I'm willing to be really competitive to get resources.
And I'll use taxpayer dollars, thank you, to do it with.
Exactly. So I have this thought experiment in my book where I think, again, thought experiment, I'm not recommending this, where I think, what if we did have the means to select every baby that was born? Every reproducing couple is going to do IVF. They're going to create as many embryos as they can, and we're going to select the ones that have the lowest antisocial behavior substance use genes. And we have a generation that is the most puritanical, risk intolerant, non-sensation seeking, controlled, not disinhibited, very inhibited. Is that a good thing? Like, is that a world that we would want?
You don't want my opinion
to
on
live
this.
in? I do. I would love to hear your opinion of this. I
don't want sociopathy. I mean, the really dark examples are so salient. I have to be careful not to end up there. But I watched that. I didn't watch the Dahmer thing on Netflix. I would pay money to not see that. I don't want to see that.
I don't have the tolerance for that either.
I did watch the Richard Ramirez Night Stalker story a few years before that was on Netflix, and it was done exceedingly well at the level of it scares the shit out of you. And he was a true, so like he was true sociopath by all measures, But then when you hear the history of his childhood, it's just horrible treatment of being, I think I have this right, like being tied to a gravestone in a cemetery overnight as a young kid, like three or five, and just left there like his father did. Just horrible things. But again, it doesn't change. What I see is the guy with the pentagram written on his hand in the court, like the mental imagery, right? So taking away guys like that, people like that, I think you go, okay, yeah, he was a sadistic killer at every level. Mm-hmm. But then a bunch of just pure passivity everywhere. I don't know. I guess it depends on how far it goes, because in the earlier example, when we were talking about this academic interaction, my friend Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL, he's very active in, and now I'm talking about kids' health and education, and he's doing a lot there. And he reposted something recently that I had a good chuckle at. So it was certainly true for me, which was that it said 90% of being a dude is making fun of your friends to their face and cheering them on behind their backs. Oh. And I think every guy that had a lot of guy friends or has a lot of guy friends growing up, or even just a couple good ones, knows that that's true. And the inverse of that are the people you're trying to select out. Yeah. Right? You don't want somebody who's nice to your face and behind your back is trying to backstab, right? Or be kind and then backstab. But yeah, a lot of being a dude is like making fun of each other, but then rooting each other on at the same time. That's kind of how we grow up. Yeah. So I wouldn't want a society where people wouldn't make fun of me and I couldn't make fun of them. But the encouragement part is also really important. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know what it is for girls. I have a sister, and she's a very, very, very kind person. And I was always shocked the way that girls treated one another. So they can be really mean. Girls can be really mean. Yeah. Yeah. Relational aggression, there's literature on this. When we talk about aggression, we so often think in terms of physical aggression. I'm punching you, I'm stabbing you, I'm hurting you. Relational aggression, where you're destroying someone's reputation or social standing or making them feel isolated, is just as painful as physical aggression, if not more so. There's few things that humans are more attuned to than that feeling of, oh, am I being pushed out of the group, right? Because that means, like, ancestrally, that means death. And so what we see research is that the same genes that predict physical aggression in boys predict relational aggression in girls. And relational aggression can be every bit as damaging, but I think also kind of bewildering to the adults around it. Like, it's more covert, right? And it's hard to see it. I was shocked at how early that started. I thought it was going to be something I dealt with my daughter when she got to be a teenager. 4 years old. Ellery said this, and, Lily isn't my friend anymore. And I met with her preschool teacher and I was like, what is going on? And she was like, this is what 4-year-old girls do. They make relationship conflict and then they repair relationship conflict, and they do it all the time, every day. And that is why they are so much less bewildered by repairing relationship conflict than your average teenage boy is by the time they reach adolescence. And I was just completely thrown and fascinated by this experience. Yeah, boys sort it out in such primitive ways. I can remember Dirt Clod Wars where somebody broke the fundamental rule, which is you can't throw rocks. They threw a rock, then someone gets upset, then they get into a scrap, and then sometimes somebody went home, but the longest it lasted in terms of a fracture in the group or the relationship was like a day maximum. Yeah. And then we just kind of forget about it. Yeah. Yeah. And it was kind of understood that someone was going to push the boundaries. I'm not completely confident that I'm remembering the study correctly. So if you're if your listeners are like, no, Paige, you got this wrong. But I remember hearing about a study that was about marital conflict, where they had married partners keep diaries of their interactions, and then also, I think maybe like spit into a tube every morning and evening. And they looked at how long did men's cortisol remain elevated after an argument compared to the wives' cortisol. I was basically like, they had the fight, his spiked up, and then it went down, like classic Trier curve of and hers was elevated for like 24 hours afterwards. And if you think about what that means for their psychological sense of what's happening in their relationship, she's like, I'm still amped about this. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, we had that fight, and then my cortisol, like, we're over it, right? So I do think there's some interesting sex differences in the relationship between our physiological arousal
and our conflict styles and just the timeline that plays out.
Fascinating. Yeah, so many ideas. And
You're thinking of all the examples.
Well, I'm thinking of some examples, and and of course what the evolutionary benefit is of those different cycles. I mean, there's certain interactions you don't want to forget. It can be damaging to self to forget fights so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say I've had interactions where at the moment it felt so like vital, and then a day later I'm like, how is it that I'm like, this might not be good that I'm not still thinking about this, but life is carrying on. The conveyor belt's still moving. Yeah. So I think it's only fair that I ask about, we talked about pathology as expressed in boys, and it always seems to come out as aggressive violence, et cetera. In girls, you're saying that the social dynamics can be benevolent, right? Because you did say conflict and repair. That sounds healthy.
Yeah.
But in terms of genes that predispose for addiction, do those show up differently in girls? Is it, I think the assumption that some people have is like, oh, it's always going to be promiscuity. But nowadays, especially because of access to prescription drugs, and I was told this by a former guest, Keith Humphreys, if you look at addiction, men and women, it tended to lean more towards men than women until you get to prescription drugs, because there's something, I don't know, less seedy.
The social opportunity is different. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what we see in the twin studies and the adoption studies, and then also in the newer studies where we're looking directly at people's DNA, is that the manifestations of at least the genes we've discovered so far are remarkably consistent between men and women. So if you have, a genetic liability towards disinhibition, problems with self-regulation, that can manifest as alcohol use, that can manifest as aggression and antisocial behavior. But there aren't really strongly sex-typed manifestations where it always looks like this in women and always looks like this in men. We haven't discovered all the genes, and we haven't looked at the sex chromosomes yet, so there might be something different. But the theory so far that seems to have the best evidence is that the underlying etiology is remarkably consistent across men and women. And it's just really the mean that differs between men and women. So you just get higher rates of all of these behaviors in men, but the underlying disposition is really similar across the sexes.
So if we were to say sensation seeking, novelty seeking, equally distributed, but men act out more.
Yeah. So what you see is that men show slightly higher sensation seeking, but the genes that predispose a man towards sensation seeking seem to be similar in women. If a woman has a fraternal twin who's a boy, his sensation seeking will predict hers just as well as if she had a twin sister. So similar genes, just a mean shift. What you see is that actually in adolescence, boys and girls have very similar trajectories of sensation seeking. Where they differ is in the evolution of their inhibitory control. So girls mature in terms of their impulse control faster than boys do. We did a study maybe 10 years ago now. It took until men around the age of 24 to be as controlled as your average 15-year-old girl was. There's like a decade-long gap in the maturation of impulse control. You're nodding, that and tracks. I used to be a 15-year-old boy.
I mean, that tracks. I think the point is that men develop more slowly.
Yeah.
But presumably they catch up, but then they die earlier, so.
Well, they go through puberty later, and they have a more extended, increase up to having adult levels of reproductive hormones. I mean, men's testosterone is increasing. Puberty is over, but their testosterone is still going up through their teen years and into their 20s. And they die earlier, but women have that long, they're alive, but they're not healthy for, on average at the end of their life. Like the difference in health span is less different than lifespan, as you know. So there's something interesting about the ways in which men seem to be slower developing in uterus. They're getting to reproductive maturity later, and they're getting to adult levels of personality later.
We need more patience. And women are all thinking, we've given you enough patience. We require more patience. That's the right phrasing. Let's talk about punishment.
Yeah.
But maybe also talk about rewarding good behavior. A while back, I think it was Zimbardo at Stanford was talking about, that we're everyday heroes, or that we were supposed to start orienting towards rewarding the everyday heroes of life. This was kind of a thing in the early 2000s, as I recall. And there's the positive psychology notion. And I feel like psychology is kind of split into dark and light. The people who like to look at the dark stuff versus the light. And
that's probably
we call it morality, but I'm an outsider. I don't know. But we spend a lot of time thinking about whether and how we should punish people. And of course, at the extremes, it's obvious, right? The legal system, it's obvious. But the middle ground is the interesting ground. Penalty boxing people, maybe not even with social isolation, but who we reward and place into positions of leadership. I mean, this is very salient right now. And it comes with a lot of assigning of labels about psychopathology from people that may or may not be qualified to assign those labels, right?
Yeah.
How do you think about the genetic and evolutionary, but also the societal labels of punishment and forgiveness?
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. So first of all, let's just define punishment, because that actually can mean different things to different people. So as a psychologist, I think about punishment is applying an aversive stimulus in an attempt to reduce the frequency of a behavior, right? So it's the rat is in its Skinner box, and every time it goes into this area, you give it a shock, and that's a punishment to make it not go into this area of the box. If you have a child, punishment is you're going to be in timeout, or I'm going to spank you. I'm going to give you some sort of thing that I know you're not going to like in order to try to reduce the frequency of this behavior. From psychology, we know from decades of evidence that punishing bad behavior doesn't work nearly as well for shaping behavior as rewarding the behavior that you want, right? So if you reward a rat for pressing a lever, it'll do that all day long. If you give a rat alcohol every time it presses a bar, and then you stop mid-experiment and you start shocking it, some rats will stop pressing the bar, and other rats will actually increase their rate of behavior. They will be like, maybe this time it'll be. It's the same thing with kids, right? We know from all of our research on corporal punishment that children who are spanked do not behave better than children who aren't spanked. And if anything, they behave worse. So you've had Dr. Becky Kennedy on here. She has been, I think, so influential in that you need to have consequences, but attempting to help your child behave better through harshness is on average going to be a losing strategy. And then I think you said, it does, maybe at the extremes with the criminal justice system, but we also see that in the criminal justice system, that increasing the harshness of criminal penalties doesn't predict a decline in crime. The thing that seems to predict it is the likelihood of getting caught and having other potential opportunities to get the rewards that you want in your social structure. But just increasing penalties for crime doesn't on average reduce crime. So whether we're talking about rats or children or prisoners, adding more harshness is not, we know, the most effective way to get the behaviors that we want. This is also true going back to dogs, right? Like, what is the best dog training method? It's never harshly punishing them or applying pain for behavior you don't want, right? It's firmness, boundaries, but rewarding the behavior that you do want. And also in the context of building, trust in a relationship with your dog. So I feel like no luck doesn't obviate responsibility. Like, we are still responsible for the people that we are, even though we're shaped by factors that aren't in control. But in terms of holding people responsible, punishing them harshly doesn't bring about what we really want, other than just satisfying that retributive itch. It's giving them opportunities in the reward structure to be rewarded by the things we do want, that we know is the most effective strategy, all in all. So I think the slide that people make is, if someone's responsible, if someone had agency, then they deserve to be punished. And what I'm trying to separate is those two things. Can someone be responsible? They had agency. We want to hold them accountable. But how do we do that without immediately jumping to, and so therefore they deserve to suffer, and so therefore they deserve to hurt? And there's no one size magic bullet to making that happen, right? Like, that's how do we relate to each other as people? But as a mother, my strategy with my own kids has been really heavily influenced by thinking about like punishment is not the most effective way. That doesn't mean we live in there's no rules, anything goes household, right? Like we have consequences, we have accountability, we have boundaries, but there's always space to say, reflect on what you did, reflect on what needs to be different for your behavior to be different in the future, and how can we create an environment that helps you grow, helps that happen. I'm pretty anti-punishment. I'm pro-responsibility and pretty anti-punishment as a way of holding each other responsible.
I'd like to take a quick break and acknowledge our sponsor, Helix Sleep. Helix Sleep makes mattresses and pillows that are customized to your unique sleep needs. Now, I've spoken many times before on this and on other podcasts about the fact that getting a great night's sleep is the foundation of mental health, physical health, and performance. When we aren't getting great sleep on a consistent basis, everything suffers. And when we are sleeping well and enough, our mental health, physical health, and performance in all endeavors improve markedly. Now, the mattress you sleep on makes a huge difference in the quality of sleep that you get each night. How soft it is or how firm it is all play into your comfort and need to be tailored to your unique sleep needs. If you go to the Helix website, you can take a brief 2-minute quiz and it will ask you questions such as, do you sleep on your back, your side, or your stomach? Maybe you know, maybe you don't. Do you tend to run hot or cold during the night? Things of that sort. You answer those questions and Helix will match you to the ideal mattress for you. For me, that turned out to be the Dusk, D-U-S-K mattress. I've been sleeping on a Dusk mattress for more than 4 years now, and it's been far and away the best sleep that I've ever had. If you'd like to try Helix, you can go to helixsleep.com/Huberman, take that 2-minute sleep quiz, and Helix will match you to a mattress that's customized for you. Right now, Helix is giving up to 27% off their entire site. Helix has also teamed up with TrueMed, which allows you to use your HSA, FSA dollars to shop Helix's award-winning mattresses. Again, that's helixsleep.com/Huberman to get up to 27% off.
In the last few years, there's been a real shift, it seems, in how we hold people accountable for their behavior in teen years. And I think it's with all the cameras and everything. There have been a few examples, for instance, of text message threads were unearthed of people who are now in their 20s and 30s from their teen years. I think in one instance, it was a group of friends and people were making racist comments. And then I think the ultimate decision was, okay, if this person apologized, their whole life shouldn't be ruined on the basis of a comment made, earlier, 5-6 years earlier in a different context, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's how it moved forward. But there were people calling for like, hey, this person is a racist. They should be forbidden from having a government job. And I think it played out pretty quickly. But nowadays with social media, everyone can chime in. So we're not really talking about courtroom decision. We're talking about court of public opinion.
Yeah.
A different example, perhaps, that I'd like your thoughts on is like Kanye had a year or two ago made a bunch of really anti-Semitic remarks. Was wearing a SWAT t-shirt and then recently published an apology. He said he was sorry. He wasn't in the right state of mind, et cetera. He's talked about some mental health challenges and things of that sort. And he seems to be largely forgiven. At least that seems to be the sentiment. Now, of course, he also brings something that a lot of people want, which is music that people love to hear. So there's always this kind of value subtraction thing when we punish people versus the anonymous person, right?
Yeah.
They're not doing anything for people. So they're more quick to just say, well, just punish them, lock them away. It's fascinating because even though these are public facing examples, we use these as a template for how to deal with, someone who, got too drunk at the dorm party on Friday and said something really stupid and you got a bunch of offended people. Do you kick them out of school? Maybe, or her. Or do you sit them down and go, hey, that was really insensitive and they have to do a bunch of sensitivity training and then you go, okay, like they're healed. I don't have any answers to this, but this is how it seems to play out in the real world. It's sort of like very salient examples, not at the super extremes. I mean, racism's bad, but he didn't kill anyone. So then the punishment is either do we keep him or do we isolate him? And then what happens does set the course of what happens at more everyday levels.
So I think what you're pointing to is America is an incredibly punitive, retributive culture. There is a reward that we can see in the brains of people when they see someone suffer if that person is first portrayed as a wrongdoer. So ordinarily, if you see someone be shocked, you have anterior insula. It's like you're being shocked too. Unless that person is first portrayed as violating some moral or social norm, in which case, dopamine, you get a reward out of seeing that person punished. I think that it is a lust just as much as lust for substances or lust for sexual partners. It is a desire people want to see people punished. Nietzsche was an amazing observer of human nature before there was a scientific psychology. And he wrote about how, why do we use monetary terms to describe people being punished, pay their debt to society? People shouldn't get off scot-free. Scot is a word for tax. What is that? And what he theorized is that what you're being paid back with is the pleasure of seeing a fellow human hurt. You hurt someone, and we can't undo that hurt. We can't magic it away. How does them being punished pay their debt to society? And he wrote, maybe it's that cruelty is a currency and that all of us have a primitive desire to be the punisher, and that's what's being repaid. Blew my mind when I was reading it. And now that I see that everywhere. I think we see that in cancel culture mobs. I think we see that in politics. I think we see in America a real lust to make other people suffer and finding ways that they're guilty that allows us to feel entitled to that pleasure of punishing them or entitled to that pleasure of witnessing them being punished is absolutely runs through our culture, top to bottom, both sides of the political spectrum. One of my favorite books that I read when I was writing my book is this book called One of Us, and it's about the Norwegian mass shooter who shot all of those children at a summer camp, who was someone who was afflicted with terrible luck. From the time he was a child, he was described as someone who had a temper, who was socially odd. His mother was very unstable. A lot of nature and nurture and circumstance conspired. And during his trial, they had this whole debate about, is he insane? Is he not insane? And they had a psychologist who gave testimony, and he said, no matter what's happening, he's one of us. He's part of our society. So how are we going to deal with him without exiling him, throwing away the key? And all of the examples that you described are people trying to make this decision about, like, who do we keep in our group? Do they have enough for us that it's worth keeping them? And who do we get to exile and then feel entitled to feel the pleasure of watching them suffer? And I think that's a fundamentally inhuman way to look at it. I think that we are a society, and that means everyone, even people who do terrible, terrible things. They're still one of us. They're still one of God's creatures. They're still part of our human circle. But how do we shift our culture away from this glee at punishment? I don't know. I think it's. If you want to talk about sin, I think that's the original sin of American culture, is our delight in punitiveness.
Incredible. Incredibly sad. Incredibly important. And an incredible opportunity for us, hopefully, to navigate out of what seems to be one of the deeper troughs of this that we've been in, at least since I've been alive. Mm-hmm. I want to just ask about this cruelty currency, because I learned a long time ago that one needs to be very careful about coming up with evolutionary just so stories. Yeah. It's so easy to do. Yes. It's so seductive, and it can be oh so wrong. So I with that stated, you said that if somebody observes somebody else being harmed, it activates areas of the brain that are associated with empathy and presumably a surge of hormones and neurotransmitters that make us feel bad. Mm-hmm. If that person was a perpetrator and we're aware of that, then it feels good. It's not just neutral. It's the inverse of that. And then you said that Nietzsche described it as a cruelty currency. And I've been wondering about something, and forgive me, I don't know if I can articulate this very well because I haven't thought about it out loud.
Just think through it.
If we return to the idea that every species, including our own, wants to make more of itself, care for its young, and propagate, that there's some forces there, clearly. I've often thought about dopamine as the universal currency of reward, and certainly there are other chemical currencies of punishment. and maybe drops in dopamine are punishment and increases are, and et cetera. Overly simplified, but I think we have enough data to support those statements. And then I think about how we punish people. And let's think about on a hockey rink, you put someone in a penalty box.
Yeah.
You take them out of play.
Yeah.
In society, somebody could be canceled either permanently or they got to like take a break.
Yeah.
Or somebody's put in jail. They're taken out of society.
Yeah.
Several examples came up already today of people who were able to propagate their genes or not propagate their genes, depending on honest, like finding a partner, making the decision about, consciously or unconsciously, the genetics, their personality, et cetera. And okay, I'm going to create children with this person. I'm going to create new life. Versus the IVF doc who cheated in one of the most egregious examples I've ever heard, creating new life. And I think about maybe the currency that is dopamine is about energy and the opportunity to create more life. It's like life energy. It gets a little bit woo. When I think about it, it's like if somebody gets something by virtue of their hard work, we expect and want them to be rewarded for it. If they lie to get it, like a Bernie Madoff who admitted to lying, so I don't think I'm going to get in any trouble by saying, I think he agreed that he lied to get all that money. Then he robbed people of currency